Hello and welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its history and what it's like to fight in-game as well. Now in these videos, I like to use your suggestions that you leave for me down in the comment section below. So if you have a monster that you'd like to see me draw, please make sure to comment with something you'd like me to research and illustrate for you, and I'll add all of your suggestions, no matter where they come from, whether they're homebrew, something you just really hope would be in the game, from the official licensed Wizards of the Coast books, from Kobold Press, or anything like that, as long as I can get a hold of it, and I'll add it to my to-draw list. And this list is something that I give to my patrons over on Patreon, who then get to vote on which monsters they see next, because they help me make these videos by tipping me. Perhaps that tip is as little as the price of a cup of tea per month, but whether it's a single dollar, up to whatever you think this content is worth to you, everyone gets an equal vote on an equal chance to influence what they see next. So if that sounds good to you, if that sounds like having a bit more control over what monsters I illustrate sounds good, and you'd like to send me a little thank you for making this content, I would very much appreciate it. I'd urge you to go and look at Patreon. Now this week my patrons have voted for a suggestion made by Grizzly, one of my longest term viewers, who suggested a few monsters I think so far that I've been able to illustrate. He's come up with some good ideas so far. And Grizzly really wanted to see the Wendigo, one of my personal favourite legends. So let's get started. As I say, I've been really excited to cover this one because I've always, well, for as long as I can remember, have been fascinated with the idea of the Wendigo. Also, the legends of these monsters come from Native American mythology and folklore, which, as I've said a few times now, is something I know very, very little about. So researching this monster was absolutely tons of fun because, it was treading new ground. Thankfully, I've been able to uncover some really cool stuff, so let's dive into what I've been able to find out. So when I say that this beast is a Native American creation, specifically, its name seems to be a product of the Algonquin language, which comprises those tribes based in North America and much of eastern Canada. Apparently, the origin of the term could have arisen from the Proto-Algonquin term Weentenkowa, a phrase I'm almost certainly butchering, by the way. But my mystery surrounding its pronunciation can fall away because its meaning is plain as day. I didn't mean that to rhyme, but there you go. Either way, its meaning is owl, or at least it's likely to have meant owl. And I say likely because the tradition of oral storytelling is a huge part of Native American culture, and with oral storytelling culture comes a lack of standardized spelling. Now, although shamefully I can't confirm the legitimacy of this, my research indicated that at the time of the first telling of a tale of the Wendigo, there wasn't a written language with which to even ascribe a firm spelling for this creature or pretty much anything else. It's that old. So there were dozens of possible etymologies for this word. But this word representing owls is a likely candidate for the origin of Wendigos, not just because of the similarity of the pronunciation, Wendigo, but because the owl is considered to be a symbol of death in many Native American cultures. An owl's screech is the sound of a nocturnal predator and can be considered a bad omen that practitioners of particularly evil rites and magics could shapeshift into owls to spy on people in their sleep, and owls are said to be able to steal souls at the behest of evil medicine men. Importantly, as a flying nocturnal killer, they're said to be carriers of death and disease in Native American culture, and this is something that they definitely share in common with the Wendigo. Basil H. Johnston, a Canadian writer and teacher of Ojibwe culture, described the Wendigos as follows. The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its skin pulled tightly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash grey of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. What lips it had were tattered and bloody, something that is so intrinsic to the idea of this creature, it's a truly haunting image and an even worse thought. It's believed that these tattered lips are because this creature is so hungry for flesh, this cannibalistic monster is so driven by its unending hunger that it will even devour its own lips if they spend too long close to its tongue. Other accounts claim that this creature has large claws and massive eyes like an owl's, something I definitely want to utilize in my illustration. And although I couldn't find any reason for this, most depictions I've seen of the creature show it as having large antlers like a deer's, and a face resembling a skull of either a deer's, a human's or a wolf's. Now this representation definitely featured prominently in the story of Until Dawn, a fantastic computer game featuring Hayden Panettiere as its lead role, but also similar representations can be seen in the Hannibal TV series, where Hannibal is represented with these large antlers and is said to be a metaphor of the Wendigo due to his cannibalistic nature and general cruelty. So I really wanted to see where this idea came from, why this kind of skull-like face, perhaps of a deer's or a wolf's, or the gaunt sort of human face, where this kind of thing came from, because definitely a human-like description seems to be what is tied to the original myths, but all the artwork I can find, if you just Google the word Wendigo even, every representation seems to show a kind of a beast-like face. Apparently, it's likely that this whole appearance stems from Larry Fessenden's take on the Wendigo in his 2001 film, based on a combination of Alvin Schwartz's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark chapter entitled The Wendigo, the story of the same name by Algernon Blackwood, and the story of some unknown deer monster told to Fessenden by a teacher when he was in school. Whether there was a version of this beforehand or not, I sadly couldn't find out, but I'm definitely going to use influence from these things in my design. I like the idea of perhaps using an owl's talons as this creature's claws, this kind of hooked, predatory feature to them. Owl's claws are brilliant for not only capturing and holding prey because of their curved lengths, but just sort of like a velociraptor, they're good at shredding meat, which I feel like a Wendigo would definitely make use of. I feel like massive eyes might sort of take away from the sinisterness of this creature, so I might shy away from using an owl's massive eyes, but I love the antlers combined with this kind of predatory skull-like head, and the skull as well seems pretty fitting. If this thing is going to eat all of its flesh, perhaps the flesh has rotted away, perhaps it's just simply never been there, but I definitely like the idea of this kind of gangly, gaunt, terrifying human form with massive antlers and a skull-like face, free of fleshy distractions for this beast. But you know what's not terrifying? Unlike this horrific cannibalistic monster, the community that we have growing on Patreon. A community of wonderful people is helping me to make these videos every single week for you. And as a thank you, I like to give them all sorts of rewards, including copies of illustrations that I do each month, including this one, private Patreon-only live streams, and even one-on-one chats. But importantly, whether they tip me the price of a cup of tea, or whatever they think these videos are worth, everybody gets an equal vote to influence what kind of videos I make next. Every month we take all of your suggestions, and all of my patrons get to vote on the top 4 that I should make each month. I really like the kind of personalness of this community that we're growing there. We have a lot to talk about, so I hope you'll join us over on Patreon and help me make these videos with you guys. That would be absolutely wonderful. But if you can't, please make sure to leave a little thumbs up if you're enjoying this content, and let YouTube know if I'm doing a good job. But anyway, unlike these wonderful patrons, the Wendigo is a really tough creature to depict. You don't want to go too werewolf with it, although comparisons can definitely be made to lycanthropy, but the Wendigo is more of a kind of spirit of savagery rather than a disease, I guess. It is the concept of cannibalism made into a living being. Mixed legends either speak of this creature being the product of dead humans who have died in harsh, freezing winters due to starvation, or are corrupted after resorting to cannibalism to survive. But the basic concept is that this monster is like a corrupting curse. Those who taste human flesh kill and eat the innocent to survive the freezing, bitter cold of these regions that these legends come from, are cursed to crave that flesh again, finding themselves overcome with the temptation to eat their fellow humanoids and slowly transform permanently into this craven skeletal hungerer, so ravenous for flesh that they chew off their own lips, being too close to their teeth, digest their own tongues if they don't choke on them, and constantly prowl the night for more creatures to devour. So what does this thing look like in D&D? Well, weirdly, Dungeons & Dragons, at least this edition, doesn't have an official Wendigo monster, but thankfully Kobold Press were kind enough to create one for 5th edition, which features in their Creature Codex. So in the Creature Codex, the Wendigo features as a challenge rating 11 creature. It's immensely strong, it has 21 strength, it's very very quick, it has 18 dexterity, and then it's an intelligent creature, no more intelligent than a human, but it can still speak common and things like that. It's immune to damage from cold or fire, I guess, as a product of something that is born out of the desperation and starvation when lost in a frozen forest or on a mountainside. It can't be exhausted or stunned, and it has dark vision up to 120 feet, like its owl-like inspiration. It's only as large as your standard humanoid, being perhaps 6 or 7 feet tall, and a medium monstrosity, but it's quite vicious when it comes to combat. It has a multi-attack where it makes 2 claw attacks and 1 bite attack, or it can use a very unique move called Frozen Spittle twice. Its frozen talons deal 2d6 plus 5 slashing damage and a further 4d6 cold damage, which is absolutely horrific, and its bite attack deals 2d8 plus 5 piercing damage. So its claw bite multi-attack there seems absolutely devastating. I would perhaps, if I were making this creature, have made the extra cold damage attached to its bite, or perhaps do poison damage from the rot in its teeth, from all the cannibalistic flesh that it's torn. Its claws would maybe be less damaging in my own sort of headcanon version, but it's still doing all 3 of these attacks in a multi-attack, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Its Frozen Spittle is a ranged spell attack, where it essentially hurls a lance of ice at someone for 8d6 cold damage, with the potential, if this target creature fails a dexterity saving throw, to pin them to a nearby surface, restraining them, or perhaps, I guess, freezing them solid, although I much prefer the impaling version, I guess. The most interesting part of this creature is its aura of starvation, something which definitely seems to turn up in its legends. Proximity to this beast causes the temptation for cannibalism. In-game, this manifests as such. We're told that a creature that starts its turn within 10 feet of the Wendigo must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or be paralysed by gnawing cold and crippling hunger for 1 minute, essentially a whole combat. A creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on itself on a success. If a creature's saving throw is successful, or the effect ends, the creature becomes immune to this effect. So the Wendigo is absolutely devastating with all the damage it can produce, and just being in its proximity can essentially paralyze you, requiring a huge amount of willpower to be mustered in order to even move while this thing tears you limb from limb. I wonder if challenge rating 11 is perhaps too low a challenge rating for this creature. I'm not sure. I suppose I'll have to use it in one of my adventures and find out if my players start complaining to me. Make sure to let me know in the comment section if you've used this creature, if you use this stat block in particular, or if you have your own homebrew version, because I would really love to see what you guys have created or what you guys use as canon. Do Wendigos even feature in your campaigns? That'd be really interesting. Or do lycanthropes of other kinds, this kind of werewolf type creature, does that replace the need for them? I can definitely see having the opportunity for both, mostly just because this creature is so fascinating to me. But there are some ways to kind of mitigate the horrificness of this creature while also perhaps increasing its level of interest. Personally, were I to create a Wendigo, I would perhaps, instead of paralysing people, although I definitely think that is a good call, maybe its aura of starvation causes people who fail a certain number of times to gain a condition where they are infected as per the bite of a lycanthrope, wherein they will transform into a Wendigo if they are not cured somehow. They start to crave flesh, maybe it's a flaw that they earn and it changes them over time. Seems less action-packed, but certainly the idea of a contagious Wendigo seems like a really interesting one, and sort of more in spirit of the actual legends. Alternatively, I mentioned that the Wendigo features heavily in the Until Dawn computer game, where to make good use of a sort of system that the PlayStation has, where it can detect motion in the controller, they decide to go a bit Jurassic Park with these creatures, saying that they're so inherently predatory that they can't actually see creatures unless they are moving. You have to stay perfectly still in order to avoid their suspicion. It might be interesting if, instead of dark vision, they have tremor sense, and you gave them the ability to only see creatures that don't move stealthily. But that does seem to go the other way and actually be less inspired by the Native American mythology version, where they are said to be connected to owls, and having fantastic dark vision does seem to be very owl-like. So yeah, I think the only thing I would really change there is perhaps the ability to be infected by one of these creatures and to gradually turn into one, hungering for human flesh. But anyway, I think I've mused for long enough. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you enjoyed the drawing, and if you did, please make sure to leave a little like down below, perhaps favourite this video and share it with a community that you're a part of, maybe even the rest of your players if you fear that your DM is going to throw a Wendigo at you and you need to be prepared. everything that you can do like that really, really helps this channel to grow. I see a lot of comments where people tell me that my channel deserves more views, and really your help is the only way that I can grow it. So I really appreciate it if you do contribute in that way and let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job. Now I've got something very, very special planned for next week's video, so I hope you will come back and join me, where as December rolls around, I can grant you all the festive gift, not of presents, but of a whole month of everyone's most requested creature. So I hope you'll join me next week as I delve into Dragon December. And until next time, happy monster hunting.